So welcome, and I'm really glad to be here. My name is Ken Levinson, the Executive Director of the Passive House Network, and we're excited to partner with Passive House California on these community meetings. Passive House California is now sort of a quasi chapter, if we may call it that. And I just wanted to say a few words of introduction before I hand it over to Jay Gentry, who will be the master of ceremonies and featured speaker today, which I'm looking forward to. The Passive House Network is a national non-for-profit. We're really focused on capacity building, on training, on peer-to-peer knowledge sharing, on learning from each other and making more passive houses from coast to coast. We have 8 chapters, including Passive House California as an honorary. If you are a member of the Passive House Network or a member of Passive House California, you're a member of if you're a member of the network in California, you're a member of Passive House California as well as PHN, and you're a member of the International Passive House Association. We are affiliated with the Passive House Institute, and a lot of our focus is around certified passive house training and other trainings around it. We encourage you to become a member, to participate in the community. And in the upcoming trainings, we have a few opportunities here in the coming month. On January 10th is an update session on the PHPP. PHPP was version 10 was released in the last year in IP, and there will be a great session with Andrew Peel of Peel Passive House to bring everybody up to snuff on that. Starting January 18th is the winter cohort for the Pacific, which is really for folks in the mountain and Pacific time zones. And over the course of about 8 weeks, you'll go through a PACE training, a mixture of hybrid, live online, as well as on demand, shooting for an exam at the beginning of April. As a California resident, if you are, you can qualify for a $500 incentive from Passive House California, which they very generously put out there. And we've had good success of having people work through the program using that. And then on January 23rd, we have a special Passive House retrofits course on the EnerFit standard, diving into the details of the criteria, of the pathways, of some case studies to really illuminate what's involved with Passive House retrofits. So we hope you can join us in one of these upcoming courses. And then finally, I just want to mention before I hand it over to Jay here and everybody else, is the upcoming international conference in Innsbruck, Austria at the beginning of April. If you have never been to an international conference, we highly recommend it. It is a blast, it is illuminating, and you meet people from all over the world working on Passive House, and we get outside of your narrower bubble and confines and really connect and make lifelong relationships and powerful collaborations professionally. So I hope you consider that and hope we can see you in Austria. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and hand it over to Jay.
Thank you, Ken. I will begin sharing. And once you can see my screen, if I click this here, we'll go to it'll be the virtual community meeting. This is what was this is what you signed up for, and thank you all for being here. The concept today is about communicating the value of high performance, and looking forward to sharing it. The information this is being recorded, so it will go up on the Passive House California passivehousecal.org website within a few days, and it will so you can see that. And also because there's when we get to a certain part of it, I've got slides that have a lot of words on them. And in case you want to come back and see those or look at them, if you are interested in having a PDF of the slides that I'm using of the PowerPoint, Ken or Kim will put the email address in the well, where you look for it. Is that right, Ken? It'll be where people, if people want to see it, you'll put the link in the chat for them to do so.
Yeah, so I've just put the link in the chat. That'll take you right to the PDF of what you're showing us.
Oh, great. Also, please put the PDF of your, or please put the link to your to the PCH Passive House Network brochure, which I'm going to show as we go through. It's not a slide, but that's there. So we're here, getting started. I think we probably have enough people here to go ahead and that we should start. So we are Passive House California, and as Ken said, we're part of the Passive House Network and the International Passive House Association and the Passive House Institute. We always like to start by thanking our sponsors, Small Planet Supply and Minutair all-in-one HVACD units are our silver sponsors for us, which we appreciate. And then we've got about a dozen supporting sponsors. From 475 to Mitsubishi Electric, Fergus Garber's an architectural firm. Ream is and Steve Ultron, our heat pump water heater that they have. Pete Moffat is a construction company. The Heinrich team is a local realtor. Hayward is a lumber company. CPHBA is they provide shading devices. Good Space and Earthbound Homes are both local California contractors that are Passive House contractors. Intelligent Membranes and Rockwool are the other two, and Prosoco. So you'll recognize those as product. So thank you to our sponsors. We really appreciate it. It's what allows us to be able to provide the $500 scholarship to people in California when they take the training. So going back to the picture of what is here, we'll get started now on the presentation itself. First, introducing myself, I'm Jay Gentry, as Ken introduced me, but I'm back when the Earth was still cooling. I went to UCLA. I'm Vietnam age, so you didn't get to pick whether or not you went in the military. I was an instructor pilot in the Air Force. I was a marketing and sales consultant and have been a marketing and sales consultant since then. Hold on, my phone is ringing. I'll stop that. Marketing and sales consultant since then, and that's why the idea of how to communicate about Passive House is something that I'm really love to be a part of and help if I can. I've narrowed my focus as a marketing sales consultant to the building performance industry in 2008 when the economy got driven off the cliff, and my business, which I thought was recession proof, turned out to be recession proof. So I was able to focus there. I'm on the board of directors of Passive House California, and I'm an advocate for the Passive House standards and all the wonderful things that they provide. So in terms of today, what I'm going to try to provide with is some information that enables informed decisions, as opposed to sales pitching to people that are thinking about, and I'm talking about developers or homeowners, or as opposed to pitching and selling. The idea is to provide them with information so they can make informed decisions, and by doing that, it's less of a sales process than it is both of us on the same side of the table looking at the issues process and figuring out whether and how they apply to you. So something that I have found helpful as I talk to people is when you say Passive House, people, well, what is a Passive House? One of the things that's really key about it is it's in the name. And Passive House is the standard, and it's obvious it's for not just houses, but all kinds of buildings. But the standard is the things that you do when you plan and build it deliver their performance naturally as a function of the way it was designed and put together. And it continues to deliver that performance over time with little or no intervention, except for potentially some normal maintenance. Passive solar, you've probably heard of. We see of this. The idea here with passive solar is that the summer sun is blocked from going in the building, whereas the winter sun comes in through the and because it's lower in the sky here in the northern hemisphere, and the thermal mass absorbs that, so it helps us in terms of what we're doing going forward. And just two real quick pictures here that show it. Here's a house with a crate with the eaves on it in the summer, where you see none of that heat from the sun or none of the solar rays are coming in. But in the wintertime, when you'd like them coming in, they do. And so I have a couple of other examples I like to talk about. One is like the wing on a race car, or for that matter, the wing on an airplane. But the wing on a race car, when it's there, what it does is as the race car goes forward, and particularly around corners with speed, that wing pushes down and creates weight that gives it better traction. But you could get it to push down by putting a bunch of weights in the back. But if you do that, then you have the centrifugal force problem of you do have more weight on it, but the tires don't hold better because the centrifugal force throws them to the side. So, and as long as you have that wing on it, when you get out and to drive the car, it is safer in the corners. It turns the corners better. Another example that I use is reverse diagonal parking, which is they're doing it here in Salinas and parks up in Palo Alto. This is a picture from Palo Alto. The idea of reverse diagonal parking is that when people back in instead of go in, particularly at like this one that is a park, it reduces the number of injuries from people driving by, personal injuries of people driving by. Because as you can see, if it's here, the bike rack would be on the back of the car probably. The picnic basket is in the trunk. The door is open in a way that the kids go to the back. And so there's danger associated with it. Whereas if you back in, not only do you still wind up with some scratches and things when people do so, but you can also look and see, and people coming into the parking lot, you're much less likely to back into somebody that you didn't see coming. And the reason that I like this as an example, because it's a passive solution. The lines are that way. Everybody's going to park that way. What I like to point out here is it really isn't a whole lot more expensive to paint the lines in a different direction. In fact, it isn't more expensive at all. And so many things of Passive House have to do with the way they apply and the way that they work, so that you don't, so that it is not an expense as it thinks about. So jumping to something that I think, and I know Bronwyn does this as well, and she starts with the Passive House as a baseline. That's what she builds or designs. And what happens with Passive House is when we talk about people upgrading to Passive House, let's see if I get to upgrading to Passive House, and they would say that they prefer that's good, but it is going to cost a little bit more, even though it looks the same. There are choices. What the choices they make essentially put them in a position of having to pay a premium, and people resist that in general. They're looking for what is there. So what I propose is that we talk about Passive House and high performance as the baseline, so that you're making choices about what you're interested in, state of the science performance, but you can actually save a little money, reduce your performance if you just use the code or pass-fail kind of standards. You can reduce that cost, but you're giving up some value. So you ask the people at this point then, what would you like to give up? Is it the energy efficiency that you don't care about, or the control? How about the air quality? Would comfort, resilience, durability, resale value, peace of and what we have found here is that when people realize that this is there and that maybe it does cost a little more, but not a lot more, and what it does for you makes so much sense, that it's that people love to win, but they hate to miss out on something. And so if you treat Passive House as this is the way we do things, and then you can offer to back down if you need to, but people rarely choose to give something up that's there. So that the idea of treating Passive House as the baseline, like Bronwyn she's an architect, a Passive House architect, and that's what she does. So that's something that I want. That's a way of doing it, is thinking of it as the baseline. A second thing that I think is that again, this is in particular works really well when you're talking with like multifamily developers or build big building folks that are building them, because we're trying now to get to zero net energy, zero net carbon, and a healthy indoor air quality. Those are the things that come with Passive House, and we now are capable to do iterative modeling so that we can simulate and figure out what's going to go there. And note here that the title is not Go Passive House, it is Integrate Passive House. Integrate the Passive House standards. And if you do that, if you integrate them, if you're already in California, you're required to build to Cal Green. A lot of people use LEED or WELL or Living Building. If you've already got these, we're not saying get rid of that and get Passive House. We're saying integrate Passive House, because Passive House, when integrated, it's a standard that most affordably enables the energy efficiency, indoor air quality, and resilience. And if you're a developer looking at it financially, it does the most aggressive reduction of energy consumption, and getting to net zero and net carbon, it makes it more predictable and reduces the risk. And for me, the favorite, the big picture is the integration of Passive House for the envelope and the air quality works synergistically with other standards. But because Passive House is more stringent in terms of the energy efficiency, indoor air quality, and resilience, you wind up you can wind up not at less than half the time. But if you're building a building to a LEED let's say call it a LEED silver standard, and you add Passive House to it, some of the time you bump all the way up to LEED gold because of the additional points that come with it. Because LEED, for example, is a point accumulation process, or it's a prescriptive process. Do this R value, those kind of things. That's broad and excellent. A way that I talk about it is if you imagine that you were putting together a football team, a professional football team, you'd want qualified, high-performing players at every position. And that's a lot what LEED and or Cal Green are like. It's point accumulation in all sorts of categories that are important and good categories, and it reflects the desired level. So you get the right thing in every category, just like you'd get the right player at every position if it was a football team. But if it's a football team, then you also have a playbook that integrates how the positions are, how the people work, and what they're supposed to do. So they're working together as a team in order to achieve specific objectives. In the case of Passive House, it is their performance objectives. And not only do you have the big picture playbook, for every building that you build or for every game that you're playing, you get the desired outcome against a specific opponent by planning and playing your offense and defense to get to that outcome. Whereas with on the other side here, if you integrate Passive House with the LEED and Cal Green, they have the breadth and a really good possibility of what is there. But the Passive House planning package integrates all of the elements into a predictive model that forecasts specific performance. It's not a do this or don't do that. It is, it's not a code thing. It is a performance thing to get the performance that's there, and it allows you to make informed choices to achieve the cost-effective and desired performance of any project that you're working on. So those three things, the Passive House is the baseline, the idea that we're integrating it with whatever else you're considering or looking on, or it can be integrated with, and that it adds the ability to get the desired result, are all important. So I'm going to jump to something else here for just a second that I want to show you, because what I'm about to show you in the next slides, I'm going to go through something that's like this. This is the Passive House Network's brochure. Starts on the front with "Are you building a sustainable future?" and then it has information about multiple categories that are here as you go down and you look at it. And then it's got the QR codes that allow you to get to the more information, to the more detail. There's a book out there called Performance Marketing, and it's something that we're all kind of used to because we've been working on the internet, buying things on the internet for a long time. And you go to the internet and you find the sweatshirt you're looking for and the sizes and things like that. And then there's a place where you can read more if you want to learn more about it. And there's places you're giving permission to, yeah, I'd like to know more. Give me more details. And so what I'm going to show you here in the next number of slides is going to be turned into a brochure type approach or a trifold type approach where the key points are there, but the offensiveness of all of the text is removed. So let me go back here then to where'd that let's do that. See, got to find my somehow. Oh wait, maybe it's out here. He said. Besides, I warned you about my technology capability. Let's go to.
Yeah, you've got to minimize that PDF screen.
Okay, yeah. Let me get and it's got to move it to
Move it
minimize
out of
it.
the way.
There we go. Move it over a little bit and minimize it. Get there, and then where is it here? I'm wondering what I don't know where it went
No,
to from here.
you
So
did-
hold
you
on one
minimize the
second.
window, not the PDF.
Pardon me?
I think, well, I'm not an Apple person.
Well, I will. I apologize. We should have done this. I can go ahead and do this again. Let me go here. Let me go. I'll just have to jump to the to and go through these things to get to it. So I apologize. It's taking me a little bit of time to do here, but we can get to it pretty quickly, he said confidently. December 23rd, community PowerPoint. So now we're back in, and where we were is we want to be right here. And so I'm going to move it now to the other screen where you can
And
see
while
it.
you bring it up, I'll just comment that I think once you go through this, Jay, I know there are a few people on the call here that are involved in marketing and selling passive house, high performance building, and or are interested in it. And so encourage folks to be ready for a good discussion after you've gone through the slides.
Okay, yeah. Well, this and I have found, and again, I advocate. I'm semi-retired, and I'm advocate for passive houses. That's what I do, and I have found that saying, "Hey, you ought to do a passive house," is much less effective than saying, "I'd suggest that you consider the possibility of passive house, learn about it." The logic of the high performance is something that so you can make informed decisions. It would be good to know about it. And as it's here, you can read it. The design and construction of new home always involves a bunch of choices based on function, aesthetics, the realities of budget and timing. And now we know that because in the face of climate change, it's very important for us to make informed choices about the performance and the associated benefits that come from passive house. I'll note also here that a passive house can be an ADU, a small building, a multifamily building, a skyscraper. But the idea for your consideration, the logic of high performance is a concept, and it goes through the next couple of slides. The passive house performance delivers, and so once people are supposedly, I learned something. Oh, okay, it's very energy efficient, good indoor air quality, resilient, increased durability, and comfort. And I like the comfort because it's both physical and acoustical comfort, as well as the emotional comfort or satisfaction of realizing that you are providing a healthy and safe home for your family and loved ones, or building for people to worship in, or whatever kind of building it is. Another thing that I think is a big point that's special about passive house, or about this high performance design and building, is that yes, it contributes to the mitigation of climate change. There was a study just done on a dozen buildings in California, and they compared them to Title 24 or the Cal Green and versus passive house. And in terms of energy for heating and cooling, the energy drives down over California's Cal Green 55% less energy for heating and cooling wherever you are. Now, if you live in the mountains where it's really cold, that's a bigger number than if you live in the desert where it's really hot. If you live along the coast, it's not as big a number, but it's still a 55% reduction. And that's the greenhouse gas emission. But something that climate change does, or that passive house does also, is because it's healthier indoor air quality. It is smoke tight. Bronwyn likes to call it smoke tight. It's airtight. You get the increased comfort, health, and safety. It doesn't get hotter or cooler when you lose power outages. In terms of adaptation to the impacts of climate change, it's a big bonus as well.
Can I,
So
Jay, just throw in, because you mentioned the study that EMU did that we presented earlier in the month.
yes,
And just for those that are interested in diving into numbers and data, I just dropped the link into the report which is super interesting, putting head to head passive house versus Title 24 and other standards.
excellent. Thank you, Ken. And this other thing that's a part of it, this comes from a man named Shane Pollan, who built the first passive house affordable a multifamily LEED Platinum and passive house multifamily building in the United States. And these are things that come from a bunch of articles out of Bloomberg and the New York Times and all kinds of magazines of what the occupants of these are really little quotes from things that people said about all of the things that you can read down here. I don't need to read them to you because you will get this if you want the thing. But that's still under their consideration. But the last thing in terms of the logic of high performance and consideration is that performance is an element of quality. I'm here in Carmel, and the people that build homes here, they want the granite countertops. They want the Sub-Zero refrigerator. They're really interested in quality things, but a lot of times they just allow their contractor to build it to code. And so performance is an element of quality. And the actual performance of the home is dramatically better due to the impacts of climate change. It just makes sense to do it. So high performance is an element of quality, and quality is more than the absence of defects. And code is basically an absence of defects approach to things. If you don't build it to code, it's illegal because you have to have one or the other or things like that. But it's not where it needs to go in terms of quality. So if you're interested in quality, performance is an element of quality. And I'd like the people to think about that. Next up, the building blocks of passive house performance. And if you're a firefighter running into a fire where it's dangerous and it's hot, or you're an astronaut and you're in outer space where the air quality is not really great. It's the personal protective equipment that they have shelters them from the heat, cold, and the unhealthy air quality. In fact, the key things of their personal protective equipment is an airtight shell or envelope, sufficient insulation, because you could make it airtight by wrapping them in saran wrap, but it wouldn't work out too well in terms of protecting them from fire or extreme cold, and continuous fresh air. Well, what do you know? Passive house fits. In the same way, it's a personal protective envelope instead of equipment. And it dramatically increases resilience to weather, fires, the associated smoke, power outage, and the balanced ventilation provides continuous fresh and filtered air while at the same time flushing out the airborne contaminants that are inside. So it's a good, and again, in selling passive house or talking about it to people, I've had people's, lights come on when this comes up, when I've said this. Next up is the building blocks of passive house performance, which are from the bottom to the top here: an airtight building envelope, including windows and doors. You need to decide as you're planning where you're going to put that air barrier. You need to use membranes and things that allow they're permeable and allow the humidity to, allow the management of humidity and things to pass through. But you get that. You have climate-specific insulation with no thermal bridges that you do. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what a thermal bridge is, the handle to your iron frying pan at home, the reason you have to use a hot pad when you pick it up is because the heat from the what's being cooked and in the bottom of the frying pan bridges to the handle. And that can happen or does happen with buildings if we don't build to make sure that we eliminate or break the thermal bridges. And then finally, the balanced ventilation with heat recovery. Buildings don't need to breathe, as you've probably heard some contractors say at some point, but people do, the occupants do. And so it's important that you have balanced ventilation with of continuous fresh air and you can filter it as appropriate. You can upgrade the filtration. Here in California, because of the wildfire smoke, we are starting to see people that have a bypass with the heat pump coming in, so that they can go through HEPA filters when there's smoke in the air or something like that you want to do. And then renewables you can add, and you wind up about an 80 to 90% reduction in the energy required for heating and cooling. And as I said, it's about 55% reduction over the Cal Green standard, the Title 24 standard, about a 70% overall reduction in operational energy use. And again, that gets down into the 50s in California, but a 95% reduction in the infiltration of airborne pollutants and allergens. And it enhances and accelerates and magnifies the impact of your renewables. Half the size of solar panel can manage your house. You don't need as many solar panels as you would otherwise. Or if you do add the solar panels on, you can use them to power your EVs and things like that. So it enhances and accelerates that, and then it delivers all of the benefits that I've mentioned before. The next slide takes us to, that's interesting. My fault. Let me go backwards. I wondered why the last one didn't have animation on it. Nope, this one doesn't. I hope I'm not on the wrong. Anyway, focusing here, the natural order of decarbonization. And here in California, the electrify everything is huge. We've got 60 plus jurisdictions that are incentivizing or requiring new buildings to be all electric. In addition to the other elements, though, are you should make the building as energy efficient as you possibly can, so that it uses less energy. Get the embodied carbon out of the building process to the extent that you can possibly, and embodied carbon is the carbon associated with building materials, building mechanical systems, the traveling to get them there, people driving back and forth to the job site, etc. So the embodied carbon is a big issue that you need to minimize when you can. Electrify everything, use renewables, and then you can get to zero carbon. And it implies here that the order of this is to start with this, but the reality is you don't start here, you start over here by figuring out what you're going to do in terms of energy efficiency. Is it going to be all electric? How are we going to get the toxins out and embodied carbon, clean energy? For an existing building, you can't always logically and economically get it to a passive house. But if you establish and figure out your optimum decarbonization potential, you can get closer to passive house and a much higher performance than you would get if you say, well, we got this much money to spend, let's put in new windows and some insulation, or do this or do that. Doing the work up front here to figure out what is possible, and then backing down for the realities of time and budget, you wind up with a much better result than if you do it otherwise. The next to last thing here to go through is something that I call C3HP. And again, this is the logical steps to deciding and choosing your high performance home. So if you're contemplating doing it, I'm suggesting that there's 3 things that start with C. Steps 1 and 2 are proactive. And the first one is to consider, as I said, for your consideration, consider the elements of high performance and the associated benefits and figure out what's there. The document and the presentation today is a starting point, but you can visit passivehousecal.org or passivehousenetwork.org. Or if you have questions and want to reach out, you can reach out to info@passivehousecal.org, and we'll get back to you and try to answer your questions and do things. So, and you're educating yourself about the principles and the associated benefits that you're prepared. So now step 1 was to consider it, learn about it, know what it is. Step 2 then is to choose what you're going to do. Are you going to pursue high performance, and what elements of high performance make sense to you? And as I said, when you know what they are, it's hard to back down from them. So you choose what you'd like your building to be, but then it's also important that you choose to engage with design and construction professionals who both support high performance and have at least one who has experience in doing the passive house. Because if you don't do that, it can be, it's hard to get as economically possible as you'd like it to go. So once again, if you're looking for a professional, I suggest try info at Passive House, and we'll try to connect you to the right professional. So that's steps 1 and 2. Now it's time to go to step 3, and step 3 is reactive instead of proactive, because step 3 is to celebrate the comfort, quiet, healthy indoor air quality, resilience, and the extreme energy efficiency that you're providing for yourself, your loved ones, your community, and the planet. That's that's the C3HP, and that's the part that's gonna turn into a brochure, but it won't. But it will. It'll have QR codes in it, so it isn't all those words. Next up is one other
There's
thing.
a hand raised, Jay. I don't know if Tom, you wanted to ask a question specifically, or we could wait until the end and have it in discussion.
I can wait. Thanks.
Okay. It should
Okay.
just be a
Yeah,
couple more minutes.
I'm something went wrong with my magic here, but in any case, why do homeowners or businesses choose to invest in high performance for their homes, buildings, and projects? And you can answer that in terms of all kinds of detailed things, but the big picture reality is they think it's a right decision. It either meets needs that they are aware of, solves problems that they're aware of, or captures opportunities that they have. And so the reason that they do it is because they believe it's a good idea and a smart choice, and it will provide value. It's your job is to get them to where they understand and know that. So if we go to the next one, meeting needs, people need physical comfort, acoustical comfort, emotional comfort, health, safety, refuge for your loved one. So those are needs that are recognized needs in general. The solving problems. It's important that we address the problems associated with the impacts of climate change in terms of hot, cold, fire, smoke, power outages, and things like that. And some of the captured opportunities, there are so many currently in terms of rebates, tax credits, and other incentives for choosing all electric high performance that these opportunities are things you don't want to miss out on. In Colorado, currently, the Marshall Fire destroyed a bunch of homes, and Colorado's Excel, which is our PG&E, which is our component is PG&E, is providing $30,000 plus to anybody that will build to a passive house standard rebuild their home like that. So it is talk about incentives. That's a good one. And a couple of other things is that. But what about, and this happened, this is why you need to choose an architect who is familiar with passive house, because your architect is liable or builder that, God, passive house is way more expensive. In fact, if you do take an existing building plan that was designed to meet code and then choose to add the passive house principles of air tightness, continuous filtered fresh air, and elimination of thermal bridges, it is likely to be a double-digit increased investment. Imagine the same thing is true as if you bought a car that didn't have seat belts, airbags, anti-lock brakes, or didn't have all of those things. When you added them, it would cost a whole lot more than building them in from the beginning. So when you choose professionals with knowledge of passive house and plan from the beginning to achieve high performance, the increased investment is minimal. In fact, the increased investment in our experience here, and we have built a few here, is there in the neighborhood of 2 to 7%. I've heard some things, it can get as low as the same, but in general, it's 2, 3, 5%, something like that that comes up. And due to the positive impacts on the mitigation of climate change, as well as the adaptation, the current federal, state, and/or utility provided incentives will generally offset most or even all of the small increase that you got when you planned it that way. And also the extreme energy efficiency, increased durability, lower maintenance, and the operational savings deliver a positive ROI over time. And by the way, I'm just going to mention this, ROI is much better than saying payback. People think, oh God, a payback, it's 12 years payback. That sounds like a long time. But if you think in terms of return on investment, the payback on a 12-year payback is about 8%, which is well more than you're getting on your CDs and things that are there. So I like using that's there. And one final thing that people say sometimes, what about, oh, we like to keep our windows open. And I like to say that that's no problem. It's fine to have your windows open if the outside is not too hot, cold, windy, noisy, smoky, or filled with airborne pollutants and allergens. And if your reason for liking open windows is to enjoy fresh air, keep in mind that the balanced ventilation system of Passive House provides continuous, fresh, and filtered air, filtered to the specification that is there. So then in conclusion here to this particular segment, I'd like to say that the bottom line is that high performance is appropriate performance. In fact, there was an article about 6 months ago from in Australia where they were saying that people considered that when they talk about high performance there, and people think of it as a premium, that you pay a premium for your high performance. So they are literally calling it appropriate performance now, and as opposed to not high performance, it's inappropriate performance. So it's appropriate performance for the comfort, health, and people and the planet. And my closing line would be, it's important that this happen. We know it's important. If we are in trouble if we don't do it. It is possible. Passive House brings wonderful things to it. It's really possible. And it's time to do it now. The question isn't why would you do this? The question is why on earth would you not? Which is why if you're building a multifamily building in an affordable multifamily building in Massachusetts in the future, it has to be to the high performance standard, this standard. It's true of New York. It's true of Vancouver. It's about to be true in Washington. All of these things work together. So the call to action for you is now that you've listened to me, thank you for listening to me for a half hour. The call to action here is what Maya Angelou said, that do the best you can until you know better, but once you know better, do better. And in terms of supporting Passive House, we have, and here I'll click one more and get this is our passivehousecal.org. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, sign up for an individual professional membership, sign up for an organization or company membership, be a sponsor or donor or volunteer, you can just go to passivehousecal.org and you'll get there. And so I'll go then to here. Thank you for your time and attention. We'd like you to be the difference. I like this graphic because the only light bulb in this whole pile that is lit is this one here. All of the others are picking it up. And here's the info at passivehousecal.org, or if you want to speak with me, time available, j.gentry@passivehousecal.org. Now, I do have some additional things. Let's go to questions now.
yeah.
But if we wind up with some time at the end of questions, I've got 2 or 3 more sales tip or marketing tips or communication about the high performance tips for you that we can go into.